I call the member for Moggill.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise today to contribute to the debate on the Tow Truck and Other Legislation Bill 2018. And well, Madam Deputy Speaker, let's talk about tow trucks, motor vehicles and traffic congestion in the western suburbs of Brisbane. Madam Deputy Speaker, each and every day as the Palaszczuk Labor government fails to act, traffic congestion worsens on Moggill Road in the electorates of Moggill and Maywa. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the fact that Labor failed to act over its last 3 years in office, and in fact during 17 of the last 20 years, is an indictment and illustrates Labor's lack of commitment to road and public transport infrastructure in the western suburbs of Brisbane.
Speaker, as fascinating as the member for Moggill's contribution is about road funding, this is actually at the tow truck bill, and I ask him to come back to the bill.
Point of order is on relevance. I'll take some advice. Member for Moggill, I'll just ask you to come back to the long title of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your guidance, Madam Deputy Speaker. So I certainly call upon the Labor government to act. Madam Deputy Speaker, in returning to the bill, this legislation will regulate private property towing, amend tolling arrangements and address the exclusion of 17-year-olds, firstly from mandatory disqualifications for serious offences, secondly from the spur regime to cover unpaid fines, as well as thirdly the demerit point system if they do not pay the fine for a demerit point offence. Madam Deputy Speaker, the LNP opposition released a policy and introduced a private members' bill in the 55th Queensland Parliament in response to increasing community discontent and ongoing media attention surrounding practices involving the removal of parked motor vehicles from private property. At the time, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Palaszczuk Labor government's response was, unsurprisingly, to announce one of their many three-month inquiries, this time into tow truck practices, which was led by former District Court Judge Michael Ford. The subsequent tow truck and other legislation amendment bill was to give effect to the inquiry recommendations and was introduced on the 22nd of August 2017. This was 2 weeks after the member for Glasshouse, the Honourable Andrew Powell MP, introduced a private members bill on the 8th of August 2017. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to highlight the pattern that is the modus operandi of the Palaszczuk Labor government, and that is copying of LNP policies and associated legislation. So in this case, Madam Deputy Speaker, handing in the diligent work of the member for Glasshouse. Madam Deputy Speaker, the LNP's real-time fuel pricing policy as well as the LNP's swimming lesson policy could have potentially become the most recent examples, although not given the outcome of last night's debate. Madam Deputy Speaker, the LNP is in touch with what the community wants and expects from elected representatives, unlike Labor. Madam Deputy Speaker, the best that the Palaszczuk Labor government to do is blatantly copy. Madam Deputy Speaker, the aforementioned legislation of 2017 lapsed when the 55th Parliament was dissolved. Madam Deputy Speaker, the legislation before us today is very much the same as the previous bill, with only minor administrative differences along with changes about which tow truck offences need to go to court versus those dealt with by an infringement notice, and a change to put beyond doubt the ability of toll road operators to issue a single demand notice for multiple unpaid tolls with only one administrative charge. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Bill of 2018 introduces several provisions to regulate private property towing, including a requirement that private property towing may only be performed by drivers and assistants who have necessary certificates and licences, increased penalties for operating a tow truck without a driver or assistant certificate, conduct requirements to be imposed on tow truck drivers, including the prohibition of intimidating, abusive or insulting behaviour, vehicles to be required to be taken the most direct route to the nearest holding yard, including a set maximum towing charge for a standard private property tow of $250, the on-site release of a vehicle at $150 and the storing of a vehicle at $25. Also, call-out fees and charges such as administrative fees will be prohibited, with the maximum penalty that may be imposed under the Tow Truck Regulation Act 2009 to be increased from 20 penalty units to 80 penalty units. And finally, clarification regarding a person's entire criminal history being taken into consideration when determining whether to grant a licence. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill also seeks to amend the Transport and Infrastructure Act, which governs the tolling arrangements in Queensland to allow multiple demand notices to be included in the one notice. Presently, the current system allows drivers 3 days to pay for their travel, and should a customer fail to pay, the toll road operator will issue a toll invoice. Should the customer then fail to pay the toll invoice by the due date, then under the current legislation, the toll road operator must issue a separate demand notice for each trip listed on the unpaid toll invoice, and each of the demand notices incurs a separate fee. Madam Deputy Speaker, 95% of customers pay within 3 days of travel, and a further 2% pay on receipt of a toll invoice, leaving only 3% of motorists who will receive demand notices. This change will aggregate the demand notice, subsequently reducing the doubling of fees. Madam Deputy Speaker, Transurban Queensland, Brisbane City Council, the Tolling Customer Ombudsman and the RACQ supported the proposed amendments for tolling demand notices. Madam Deputy Speaker, following the commencement of the Youth Justice and other legislation, inclusion of 17-year-olds Amendment Act 2016 on the 12th of November 2017, the age of an adult was raised to 18 years, meaning that 17-year-old children would be excluded from mandatory disqualifications for serious offences and from the Spur regime to recover unpaid fines and the demerit point system if they do not pay a fine for a demerit point offence. To ensure that 17-year-olds with a P1 provisional licence continue to be held accountable for their driving behaviour, the bill proposes to retain the current legislative position. As such, 17-year-old drivers will remain subject to mandatory disqualifications, liable to Spur for unpaid infringement notices and subject to the demerit point scheme. The following comments were included in the Statement of Reservations submitted by the LNP as a part of the relevant parliamentary committee's consideration of Labor's bill last year, and I quote, "It is disappointing that the government decided not to consider the tow truck towing from private property Amendment Bill 2017, a private member's bill introduced by the member for Glasshouse on the 8th of August 2017, at the same time as the government's bill during the committee's inquiry. The LNP non-government members consider the decision for the House not to consider both bills in a cognate debate to be a matter of petty politics rather than the interests of public policy. The Palaszczuk Labor government's bill also does not act on a number of significant concerns raised by the community, namely car park signage and maximum towing distances. The government's proposal does not seek to limit the distance a car can be towed from private property, meaning a car towed from a Fortitude Valley car park could potentially end up Logan or North Lakes." End quote. Madam Deputy Speaker, I conclude by saying that whilst this legislation is a step forward in the right direction, we are only really here addressing this issue because of the leadership shown by the Liberal National Party and the great work undertaken by the member for Glasshouse. And Madam Deputy Speaker, there is still more work to be done. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I know the new Shadow Minister, the Honourable Steve Minikin MP, the member for Chatsworth, will continue to hold this Labor government to account and champion strategies to ease traffic congestion, enhance public transport, ensure accountability with respect to Queensland's tow truck industry and highlight ongoing much-needed Spur reforms.
I call